Welcome to another Target 60 video and the return of our Playability series. Today we are taking a close look at the Radeon R9 270X. If you are unfamiliar with our testing methodology, check out our first video introducing the concept. Coming up, smoke, alcohol, and ingenuity. The R9 270X, codenamed Pitcairn XT, was released late in 2013 to compete with NVIDIA's 660 and 760 lineup. It is essentially a refined HD 7870 manufactured on the same 28nm TSMC node, but with a $150 price reduction. You see, in the 2013 era, process manufacturing was not advancing, so AMD was recycling its GPUs from the previous years to improve the price to performance of their offerings before launching the R9 290X. The result, the R9 270X launched with a price of $199 versus $350 for the outgoing HD 7870. Much like the HD 7870, it features 1280 cores clocked at 1 GHz with 2 GB of GDDR5. This version here though, the Sapphire Toxic, comes out of the box at 1100 MHz, a nice 10% overclock. Each card will also boost an additional 50 MHz if conditions permit, which I would expect on a card with as beefy a cooler as this will always be the case, but let's find out. The R9 series supports DirectX 11 with feature support for DirectX 12, and this may become an issue in the coming years as more and more games start adopting the full DirectX 12 API. In 2013, this card was pitched as a 1080p option. After 7 years, who thinks it'll still pass the Playability suite in 2020? Comment your best guess below and keep watching to find out. Big picture in 2020, driver support is current as of this video, which is a credit to AMD for iterating on the GCN architecture for so long. There is one glaring drawback though. That 2 GB of memory is really going to hold this card back, even at 1080p. There are a few 4 GB variants of this card, but they're pretty rare and outrageously overpriced on eBay. But maybe in the future we'll be able to take a look at them. Speaking of eBay, there is a bit of a story behind this card. It was a second-hand purchase from eBay, and when I opened the box I nearly coughed up a lung. The previous owner was a very heavy smoker, and this Sapphire R9 270 Toxic Edition really lived up to its namesake in this moment, as I was coughing and tearing up as a result. My immediate reaction was to disassemble the card and give it a long soak in an alcohol bath. Just to stress how toxic this card actually was, even the thermal pads reeked and had to be thrown out. Only after it was bathing did I manage to snap some photos of the process. During reassembly, I replaced all the thermal pads and gave it a fresh dash of NT-H1 paste. Following this, I realized the fans were broken and reassembled the card without the shroud, leading to this monstrosity you see before you featuring 2 Noctua A9s banded to the board. Though I wouldn't advise this for long-term use. For those curious, I set the fans to 40% power and temperatures never exceeded 60 degrees Celsius. So on to the playability benchmarking. We tested AC Origins, Apex Legends, CSGO, F1 2019, Fortnite, Grand Theft Auto 5, Minecraft, Call of Duty Warzone, and Rocket League, each at 1080p on quality settings of low, medium, and high as applicable to each. To recap, at Target 60, if hardware cannot manage a 60 FPS playability score, which is a consistency mark, not an average frame rate, it does not get recommended. There are too many channels who purport GPUs as playable with 30 FPS at 480p, and I want to share a different view. So for real this time, onto the playability benchmarking. AC Origins is our Joker title for this video, and if the R9 270X could make wishes, I know it would have picked a different game, as AC Origins is demanding even for modern hardware, and the results show. Averages for AC Origin showed 27, that's right, 27 frames per second, with playability marks closer to 2/3 of those figures. High settings averaged 14 FPS with highs of 17, and low settings averaged 38 FPS with highs of 45. One could play this game at low at 30 FPS and manage a playable experience, but this is target 60, not target 30, so the card fails our playability criteria as it cannot maintain 60 FPS in this game on any quality setting at 1080p. Apex Legends is a popular battle royale title that caters to the masses. Sadly, it does not cater to the mass GPU market, as the R9 270X struggles on all quality settings at 1080p, with an average FPS of 62 at the lowest quality setting and an overall playability score of just 36.2%. Targeted playability frame rates at low do make this experience more consistent around 66 FPS, but at this point I would recommend just turning on VSync. Another note, streaming or recording Apex Legends on the 270X was hard. The game would consistently crash a few minutes after starting the recording, and obviously just as I was winning. CSGO needs no introduction, but the variety of gameplay means that the standard deviation of frames is extremely high, ranging from 28 to 39 frames across the low to high settings. Average frame rates were good though, at 179 across all quality settings, but the playability score at stock was only 33% as a result of that high standard deviation. Playability targets dialed in though, the R9 270X rocked this title with average frame rates across all quality settings of 115 and playability scores averaging 98%. F1 2019 suffered the most from the lack of VRAM as evidenced from the huge frame rate drops at the ultra quality settings, averaging only 14 FPS. Ignoring the ultra settings though, the title was decently playable across high, medium, and low presets, averaging 81 frames per second with a 92% playability score across these quality settings. While this game does support DirectX 12, we ran this using the DirectX 11 API as the results were less than stellar. Fortnite was more challenging than expected as the R9 270X again bumped into a VRAM limitation at the higher quality settings, achieving 0% playability with a 29 FPS average using the epic quality settings. Performance improved nicely though once moving to the low, medium, and high quality settings with targeted frame rates of 105, 60, and 45 respectively. Playability scores were initially below 68% even at the lower quality settings, but once factoring in our targeted frame rates, playability improved to 94%. The card's strong performance at the low and medium settings earned this card a passing playability score and me, my first victory dance. I'm surprised GTA 5 is still a relevant title in 2020, and the R9 270X manages well here. The initial data showed a 90 FPS average with a 53% playability score across low, medium, and high quality settings. Dialing this in for our targeted frame rates, I found the medium and low presets to give passing playability marks of 96 and 94% respectively. I am just getting into Minecraft and will have my first playthrough video up soon, but this game destroyed the R9 270X at fancy settings with everything maxed out. It was another example of the limited VRAM holding this card back as the GPU utilization dropped significantly during our high quality run through, averaging only 32 FPS but with a 14 frame standard deviation. It's far from all bad though. Looking at our medium and low quality settings, Minecraft had insane frame rates, but I found that while 500 FPS is amazing, at a 2-chunk render distance, I struggle to call this playable as you have no idea what's around you. The middle ground on the settings yielded a healthy 195 FPS average, with a disappointing 50% playability score due to the 62 frame standard deviation we saw. Dialing in our targeted frame rates at the medium settings though yielded a 105 average frame rate with a healthy playability score of 96%. Go Minecraft. Call of Duty Warzone is a new release, free-to-play title from Activision, and do you think the R9 270X can handle it? Because I didn't. And it really didn't do well in this title. Even on the lowest quality settings at 1080p with no resolution scaling, the R9 270X only averaged 45 frames per second, with a playability target closer to 30. A far from acceptable result for a fast-paced first-person shooter, and even less so under our playability criteria. Last but not least, Rocket League told much the same story as our other games, that the low-medium quality settings is where this card shines in 2020, as the high-quality settings struggled to maintain an average frame rate just below 60. Rocket League's performance varies quite a bit depending on the field chosen, so after sampling several we settled on the worst to get an overall playability score of 10% at default settings. driven again by the high standard deviation of frames at the low and medium quality settings of 58 and 43 respectively. Once factoring in our targeted frame rates of 75 for both the medium and low quality settings, we yielded a much stronger playability score of 96 and 98% respectively. To summarize these results, what's most surprising to me is just how playable games are on this card at 1080p across low to medium settings. The real drawback to this card in 2020 though is the 2GB of VRAM. It holds this card back in all the games tested at the high ultra settings, and the R9 270X overall playability score suffers as a result. I am searching for a reasonably priced 4GB version of the R9 270X to see if that'll change these results. If you have or know of someone selling one, please comment below or send me a message. In summary, does this card pass playability tests in 2020? No, it really doesn't, and I can't recommend you buy one to play modern games. But if you're into collecting cool vintage graphics cards, I would get one. It's the reason I got this Sapphire variant. Outside collecting though, the combined final playability score means that in 2020 this card is best used for esports titles at low to medium settings when considering 1080p, and as it can be picked up for around $50 in the second-hand market, it's not a bad choice. We won't be running the esports playability suite on this one unless you guys really want to see it, as that test consists of 720p, and given this card's performance here with games like Rocket League and CSGO, it's very likely to pass. Thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed, consider hitting that like button and subscribing for future content. In an upcoming video, we will be exploring the rabbit hole that is Minecraft as I summarize my very first playthrough. Is this not over? Oh, that's right. The giveaway winners are as follows. Congratulations, I'll be contacting each of you with your prizes.